what then is the collision of a new technology like AI becoming so ubiquitous in an unregulated fashion that gives you pause? Is it US China? Is it a rogue actor making bioweapons? Like, what's the thing that when you look near term, we'll say the 3 to 5 year time horizon, what gives you pause?
So there are a few things. I don't, even though I said I don't think I'm going to fire anyone because of AI, I do worry that the same populist trends that we have experienced in the developed world in particular over the last 20 years can grow faster. If you are a rural, living in a rural area, or you're undereducated, and you're not going to become AI adjacent in the next 5 years, 10 years in the United States, in Europe, and those people will be left farther behind by the knowledge workers that have that opportunity. And so I'm not saying that they're going to have massive unemployment, but I worry about that.
What do you think about like picking fruit and stuff like that with robots? That make your radar for anything near term or?
Again, not so much. So I would say no. Let me tell you why I say no about that. Because when I think about what CEOs do with their workforces, generally they take those productivity gains, they pocket them. They pay out good bonuses to themselves, to their shareholders. Maybe they invest more in growth. But as long as growth is moving, they're not getting rid of a whole bunch of people. They like the people that they have. They want it. They're always thinking the trees are going to grow, sort of to the heavens. And then when they face a sudden contraction, a recession, or even worse, a depression, then suddenly they look at everything around them and say, okay, where can we cut costs? And if a lot of those workers aren't as efficient as they used to be, and you get new technologies, suddenly it's not like you're incrementally getting rid of people every year. It's that you've taken a huge swath out of the workplace. So I don't think that that's going to happen suddenly in the next few years, because we're coming out of a mild, narrow slowdown right now, and the next few years should look better. I more think about what happens the next time we're in a major cyclical downturn, and combining that with where we've gotten to with the AI productivity buildup at that point. But I still think that in the interim, you're going to have people that aren't gaining the productivity benefits from AI inside Western economies. And those are the same people that have been hit by the fentanyl crisis. Those are the same people that haven't had good investments in their educational systems. Then around the world, the digital have-nots, the people that aren't even online, so they won't be able to use these new AI tools to improve their knowledge, to have access to better doctors. So they'll be left behind this new turbocharged globalization. And that's a lot of sub-Saharan Africa, first and foremost. So I do think that there are two groups of people that even in the next 5 years that will suffer comparatively, and will be angry politically, and will create social discontent. So I didn't mean to imply that I didn't care about that, or that I thought it was off the screen. It was more that I don't see that as a firm of literally 250 people. Like, we're tiny. And if you tell me that we're going to have a lot more efficiency, I wouldn't actually hire less. I'd hire more, because I want to get to 500 people faster. Like, there's just more things that I want to do without taking any outside investment. But that's a tiny issue compared to the other stuff we're talking about. The things that I'm probably most worried about in the near term, 3 years, let's say, I'd say are three buckets. The first is the disinformation bucket. The fact that inside democracies, increasingly, especially with AI, we as citizens cannot agree on what is true. We can't agree on facts. And that delegitimizes the media. It delegitimizes our leaders and both political parties, or the many political parties that exist in other developed countries. It delegitimizes our judicial system, rule of law. It even delegitimizes our scientists. And you can't really have an effective democracy if there is no longer a fact space. I mean, we're seeing it right now in a tiny way with all of these indictments of Trump. And it doesn't matter what the indictments are. It doesn't matter how many they are. It doesn't matter what he's being indicted for. What matters more to the political outcome is whether or not you favor Trump politically. If you do, then this is politicized. It's a witch hunt, and Biden should be indicted. And if you don't, then Trump is unfit, and every indictment doesn't matter what it is before you even get a result of it. Then he's guilty, and that with AI becomes turbocharged.
I want to get into why that happens. So my first question on that is it's definitely pre-AI, because I think this started breaking down with social media.
Great.
How prior to social media do you think that we were able to come to a consensus on truth?
Well, a couple of reasons. One is that a lot of people got their media from either the same source or from overlapping and adjacent sources. So you had more commonality to talk about politics to the extent that you talked about politics. Second, it was mostly long form. So you would read a newspaper article, you would listen to a radio show, you would watch a television show. You weren't just getting the headline, because today, if you go on CNN or Fox News on their website and don't look at the headlines, just look at the pieces actually overlap a fair amount. If you look at the headlines, and then if you look at what headlines you're being filtered to, then the news that you're getting is completely different. So I think that's a reason too. And of course, the fact that people are spending so much more time intermediated by algorithms means they're spending less time randomly just meeting their fellow other. And that's even true with the rise of things like dating apps, right? I mean, as opposed to just happening to date someone you were in high school with or in college with, or, you meet at a bar. I mean, if you're meeting that person through a dating app, you're already being sorted in ways that will reduce the randomness of the views that you're exposed to. So in all sorts of tiny ways that add up, that are mostly technologically driven, we become much more sorted, not sorted, though sorted probably too, as a population. And then you put AI into this, and suddenly this is being maxed. So I'll get another example. You'll remember that I think it was David Ogilvy, who the great advertising entrepreneur, who once said that we know that 50% of advertising dollars are useful, 50% are useless. We just don't know what 50%. And of course, now we know how to micro-target. Now we know that when we're spending money, we are spending it to get the eyeballs of the people who are going to be affected by our message. They will be angered by it. They will be titillated by it. They will be engaged by it. They will spend money. They will become more addicted by it. All of those things. And when you do that, you more effectively sort the population, as opposed to throwing a message at the wall, but everybody gets the message. And so it is not the intention to destroy democracy. It is not the intention to rip apart civil society. It is merely an unintended secondary effect of the fact that we've become so good at micro-targeting and sorting that people no longer are together as a nation or as a community. And AI perfects that. AI allows you to take large language models and predict with uncanny capacity what the next thing is. And the next thing for an advertising company is how I can effectively target and reach that person, and not the other person who doesn't care about my message.
Yeah, and keep them engaged. So let me give you my thesis on this. This, I think, is one of the most important things for us to all wrap our heads around. I've thought a lot about why is there a sudden breakdown in truth? And the more I thought about, okay, what is true? How can we go about proving it? The reality is that so much of what we perceive to be true is merely your interpretation of something. So you're going to get a perspective on something built around what I call your frame of reference. So your frame of reference is basically, it's your beliefs and your values that you've cobbled together sort of unknowingly throughout the course of your life. It becomes a lens through which you view everything, but it is a very distorted lens that is not making an effort to give you what is true. It's making an effort to conform to the things you already believe are or ought to be. And so when people confuse that for objective reality, then you have a problem. And so when you introduce AI, One, when you introduce algorithms, you get massive fragmentation. So now I can serve you just the things that you're interested in. So like if you go to my feed, you're going to niche down into like really weird things around video game creation, which is something that I'm very passionate about, that somebody else isn't going to see. And so you get already that fragmentation. You layer that on top of your perspective, which you're coming with those pre-distortions. Then you layer that on top of the algorithm has an agenda that may not match your agenda. And now all of a sudden you get into these echo chambers that are feeding back to you your same perspective. They're eliminating nuance by giving you, like you were talking about headlines earlier, by giving you like, this is the talking point. And so now you start, everything becomes predictable. If I know you're on the left, I know what you're, on a basket of concepts, I know where you're going to fall. If you're on the right, same basket of concepts, I know where you're going to fall. And so once you get rid of that nuance, now all of a sudden, again, we're not optimized for truth, we're optimized for party line. And because that then feeds into a sense of tribe and I belong and ease of thought, quite frankly, which is one of the things that scares me the most. Is like, oh, I don't have to think through that issue myself. I just need to know what my party line is. Cool, got it. And now I go.
Yeah.
And as we get more and more fragmented, now it becomes, okay, I know what my party line is in my very deep fragment here, but I don't know what's true, and I no longer even know how to assess what's true. In fact, I probably think, again, because that distortion reads to me as objective reality. So I think it is true. And so now you have all these people who are like, this is true. Like there's nothing you could tell me that will make me think any different because I believe this to be true. And so now the question becomes, if I'm right, that truth is perspective and interpretation, and you're soaked in the perspective and interpretation of others, so they reinforce. So it becomes perspective, interpretation, and reinforcement. And so that becomes quote unquote truth. Outside of science, because even science, we run into the same problem.
If you like that clip, check out another powerful clip right here, and I'll see you there.